aware that Susan Corcoran has a daily morning show now, and that's on Kits Radio. I don't know how much these guys have been talking about that on Outlaw Radio Network, but I don't think I'm out of line for saying that. But that explains why my voice doesn't sound like hers. I'm not her. My name is Stephen Gardner. This is Field of Steve. Before, we've been running from 3 to 5 p.m., and I think the last few weeks my show has been running and from 5 to 7 as well.
Yeah, we were doing a double there for a while.
Yeah, well, I haven't done that many shows, so I'm glad to hear that there was enough enough content that you could fill in. For most of the month of April, I was not here. I think I was here the first week of April, and I think that was the only news show that I produced or that I created that during April. There was 1 week that we were off. That was Easter, and so I had that excuse. But I traveled to Cincinnati early in April, and there was a week of being sick, and I was working on the weekends, and so we just went with reruns in the grand tradition of Johnny Carson. For those of you old enough to remember him, hi-oh. Anyway, my name is Stephen Gardner. I am joined sometimes on the air by...
Caleb.
Caleb.
Yeah.
Did we just go with Caleb?
Yeah, that's fine.
I wasn't sure if we went more than that, but...
No, that's fine, because my other name doesn't really fit this show, so...
Okay.
We'll use my real first name.
Okay. Caleb is on the air with me. He's running the controls behind the scenes, and I'm flying by the seat of my pants here in the studio this week. That's nothing new. This is, as I've told you a couple times, this is Field of Steve, and that actually, I haven't talked to the Outlaw guys about this, but the name of the show might actually change sometime soon. And I gotta ask you, Caleb. This is some sausage making again. What time? When's our first break?
It'll be 30 after.
30 after. So. Okay. So when I first started podcasting, which was in 2011, I named the show the Narrative Arts Podcast, and my thought at the time was to have not just my stories, but lots of other folks' stories. And what I found out over time was that it is hard to get other people to tell stories. I had a few folks in mind that I talked to. I got some of their stories, and we had some really good conversations in that. But for reasons of branding, and this is a conversation that we have in the newspaper business, as some of you know, my day job is as a reporter for the Kitsap Sun newspaper in Bremerton, Washington. And if you don't know where Bremerton, Washington is, you're probably not watching this live on edgemediasource.com. Bremerton is across Puget Sound from Seattle. At any rate, I was doing the shows from here, and it was hard to get people to come on board, and I decided... getting to the branding question, branding is something you do as a reporter. You want people to kind of know who you are, which is really anathema to how we in the print business were raised. Unlike broadcast folks, we don't get in front of the camera very often, and we kind of shied away from being personalities. We were these faceless people behind bylines, and that was as much as folks got to know about us, unless they were out in the community going to the events that we were covering. And so that kind of changed when the newspaper business ran into some troubles, for one thing, and as the internet grew in popularity and just becoming it went from being something new to something that you can't believe ever didn't exist. And as that transition happened, newspapers looked for more ways to consider how to stay relevant in that. And one of those ways was to turn their reporters into personalities. And it hasn't been a heavy push. There hasn't been, somebody nudging us in the back to become something other than, people who go out and write stories about news events and issues. At the same time, we kind of got used to the idea that maybe it wasn't so bad that people knew who we were. And so, I was not just Kitsap Sun reporter. I was Stephen Gardner, Kitsap Sun reporter, and or Steve Gardner, whatever you prefer, and the and so when I was I had a blog before called Field of Steve. Field of Dreams is my favorite movie, and so I turned it into Field of Steve. And frankly, it's one of those names that's probably not going to be subject to any kind of trademark. In other words, I'm never going to have to sue somebody for trademark infringement. Field of Dreams folks, those people might sue me for this, but if they do, it's going to be a topic on the air.
It'd be a good topic.
Well, yeah, sure it would. I mean, that's something that always gets people's interest. So I changed it to Field of Steve for a while and was kind of playing with the idea. And it isn't like the podcast was getting to thousands of people anyway and was confusing a ton of people. I would just tell the 2 or 3 people that were regularly listening to it, go here from now on. And I don't even think the I'm not sure that the I don't remember what web address I was using back then. At any rate, I've gone back and forth on it, and so for the first year, I went from the Narrative Arts to the Field of Steve podcast, and then I ended back with the Narrative Arts because again, I still had not let go of the notion of telling lots of other people's stories as well. When I came back to podcasting, I decided to go with Field of Steve. Who knows why these reasons are? For one thing, I don't really care for the name The Narrative Arts. It just seemed kind of boring. And so I thought Field of Steve was catchier, and so that seemed like a logical thing to do. But as some of you know, and some of you have had the good fortune to buy my book, which was called Spill Your Guts, I had put those 2011 stories into the book form so that you could actually read them instead of having to listen to me speak the stories I told that year. And it gave, number one, it gave me an experience in creating a self-published book, and number two, it got my name out there, got the book out there a little bit, and so I kind of like that name. I kind of like Spill Your Guts. And so in the near future, and there are reasons I really don't. I can't go into, but there may be some public events in the not too distant future that revolve around storytelling. On Bainbridge Island, they have every quarter or so they have a Bainbridge Island Story Slam, and I've participated in a couple of those. They're a lot of fun. They're nice, fun events. And for years, Angela Dice, who was a former reporter at the Kitsap Sun and now works elsewhere, she and I had talked about we would like to put on a storytelling event in Kitsap County. I'm not much of an administrator myself, though, so it was it was one of those things where it's like, well, do I really want to add a fourth thing to my to-do list? And recently things have kind of changed, though, so that this might become an actual thing again. So all I would say is stay tuned. If you want information on things like that, right now the best place to go is to my Facebook page, which is coincidentally Field of Steve. Also, with this branding thing, I also ought to mention that I had 2 Facebook presences, one for work and one for my personal life. And I went through a training at work dealing with Facebook, and I, for lots of reasons, came to the conclusion that maybe it would be worthwhile to just forego one in favor of the other and just have one be the universal place. And the most obvious place is my personal profile. So if you live in Kitsap County and you're not a friend of mine and would like to be, send an invite to and look for Stephen Gardner. And my profile picture is of me and my wife, Diana. And send a friend request, and I'm sure I'll
Yeah, branding is very important. That is, switching from going to 2 Facebook pages to one it's a big deal.
Well, it is, and I'm still nervous.
It's like, what do you put out there? Because now you've only got the one Facebook page. It's like, okay, do I put this personal information out there, or do I keep it to myself? Or that is a really big deal.
Yeah, I was careful on my professional page to tone down the racist rants that I would do, and now I have to be careful on my personal page. That's a joke, folks. Going back to, it refers to something recent. I am a news guy, so Donald Sterling has been in the news lately. So, going back to that, but yeah, no, it is something that has made me nervous, and people have come on, and I just, I just sent out a bunch of invites for people to like the Field of Steve page, and within the last seconds, I had a couple of people who are local, Kitsap Sun folks, Will Maupin, a former city councilman. Here in Bremerton, he just said, yeah, okay, he's on board with the Field of Steve, and most people do this, because you send out an invite and they go, okay, well, it's come from him, all right, well, okay, I'll go ahead and like that. So anyway, up to 141 friends who like Field of Steve, and there's probably there's 156 people who like it generally. So keep them coming. Keep those cards and letters coming, folks. We'll run the telethon later sometime, around Labor Day to compete with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. That also is a joke. We don't want to compete with Jerry's kids. So at any rate, later you're going to be listening to, I assume if you're listening to this show, you're probably interested in the Outlaw Radio Network show that runs later. And I will tell you, and I'm sure that Kevin and Paul are going to have some more to say about Donald Sterling, because since their last show, the lifetime ban has come down against Donald Sterling. I want to share a little story about Donald Sterling. It isn't very good. Are you interested in hearing it, Caleb?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm actually looking to. I was going to send you something over here in a minute for you to put on your Facebook wall.
Okay.
And it's actually the video itself that you could embed on Facebook.
Okay.
So I was just getting ready to pull that out.
Okay, great. I will. How are you going to send it to me?
We
haven't figured that out, have we?
Am I friends with you on there? It's really just it's a link that that you literally just post. Yeah, I'm friends with you. I'll Facebook it.
Okay.
Or, send it to you in a message on Facebook.
Okay, there you are.
In a
Yeah.
minute here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. Awesome opportunity for you folks at home to again hear the sausage making that is internet radio. Some of us are in this business because we want to learn better how to do this kind of thing, and that would be my role. I can't remember where. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about Donald Sterling. First of all, I want to, and I had considered whether I was going to address this issue before, and I guess the guys at Outlaw have talked about this extensively last week, and we'll probably address it tonight. Though I assume a lot of the conversation tonight will be about Kevin's trip to Vegas. Are you anticipating that, Caleb?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't. Well, I have some things I have to question him on about it, but
about Vegas, yeah,
yeah.
Well, in fact, if I ever get to talking to what I have on what I call a show sheet, this is what radio people do. Apparently, is they put together what's called a show sheet, things they want to talk about. But yeah, I would assume he'll talk a little bit about it at least, and the most of this show is going to be about road trips. So I'm going to talk about, and Vegas comes up quite a bit because growing up in Los Angeles and having lots of connections in Utah, Vegas was a common stop for me as I was growing up in Southern California. But interesting. Anyway, Donald Sterling. Okay, I want to get to the Donald Sterling story, and like I said, I wish I remembered more details than I do. And unfortunately, the man who told me this story is no longer with us. He was my Uncle George, who, in addition to being a World War II hero, Silver Star recipient in World War II, worked for Southern California Edison upon return from the war and after going to college and giving up on living in Denver and all of those kind of things. He raised his family in Cerritos, California for much of his life, and that's where he lived when he died. And he also worked for the Coliseum and the sports arena in Los Angeles. And he was there one time when Donald Sterling was there. And by then, by the time I heard this story, I'd heard a lot of stories about Donald Sterling. And I know there were lots of, basically he was considered the worst owner in professional sports. which, when you consider Marge Schott owned a baseball team and George Steinbrenner owned a baseball team, as reviled as those people were at times, they still considered Donald Sterling the worst owner in sports. And some of it had to do with how cheap he was with the team and some of the things he would not do. And anytime, and I think Seattle fans can relate to this actually, Seattle Mariner fans anyway, that there are times when you are a fan of a team and you get the sense that you're never going to experience a winner because the owner just won't do it. This was my experience when I was a Ram fan growing up. Having grown up in Los Angeles, the Rams were my team. And now, Caleb, you grew up around here, right?
Oops. Yeah, born and raised.
Okay, so are you a Seahawk fan for a lifetime?
Yes.
Okay, so your distaste for the Rams is relatively recent because the Rams weren't in the Seahawks division for years and years. Seahawks switched leagues and
yeah, I got some other teams I hate a little bit more, but
so you probably hated the Raiders growing up and maybe the Broncos.
Yeah, the Steelers.
Okay.
49ers.
Oh, really? No, the 49ers would have been recent too, right?
Yeah.
Since Terrell Owens was with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Those are the main ones.
So now, and I think people here generally don't hate the Rams anyway, even though they are in the division. They don't hate the Cardinals so much. It's the 49ers for sure.
Yeah, I think it's 49ers and Steelers.
Yeah.
After that Super Bowl, that's tough loss.
Well, especially since the Steeler fans were saying, "Get over it." Get over it. Yeah, that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, I grew up rooting for the Rams, and I, growing up in Los Angeles, and I stayed true to my teams for the longest time. And one team I will never, and I think I proved this during the McCourt era of the Dodger ownership, and maybe even to some degree the Fox ownership, though they weren't as bad as McCourt. That I proved that I will probably never abandon the Dodgers. I say probably because I just don't want to. I don't want to bind myself to something. Maybe when I'm 80 years old, that the Dodgers will be, for some reason, the devil of baseball sports franchises, or Los Angeles itself will have declared war on Seattle or something like this. At any rate, so I grew up living in Los Angeles. I grew up for the Dodgers. I grew up rooting for the Dodgers, the Rams, the Lakers, and when I paid attention, I would root for the Kings, the LA Kings, the hockey team. And I didn't pay attention all that much, and that is actually too bad because there's an exciting situation down there right now with the Kings playing the Ducks in the NHL playoffs. But the Rams were owned by a man named Carroll Rosenblum who died. And he died in his swimming pool, I believe. He drowned. And ownership then went to his wife, Georgia Rosenblum. And she ended up later marrying somebody, and she was Georgia Fronieri. And in the 80s, they got a quarterback. First of all, they got Eric Dickerson. And they kept messing around with him. They just didn't. They weren't willing to pay him what he was worth, and when he was with the Rams, he was just phenomenal. And they had a coach, John Robinson, who did a good job for a lot of years there. And then they got a quarterback, Jim Everett, so it really looked like things were on the upswing. But over years and years and years, I would watch that team and would get tired of seeing ownership not do what I thought they needed to do to make the team a Super Bowl winner. Now, it wasn't true in the 70s. That I think the owner did everything they could, and the Rams would just choke. But in the 80s, it was something different in the age of free agency, and it just didn't seem like Georgia was willing to adjust. And Jim Everett turned out to be not the savior we hoped he would be. And then the Rams let Eric Dickerson go, and the joke then was, why was Eric Dickerson happy to go play for Indianapolis? Or I can't remember. He went to the Colts, but why was he so happy to leave? And the punchline was because he was finally going to get paid what he got paid when he was at SMU. And so this went on, and then the 49ers eventually took Steve Young, who I had watched in college. I watched him play in college, and I had found him to be the most dominant college football player I had ever seen. And even though he wasn't starting, the 49ers were committed to being good. They not only had him as a backup quarterback, and that says something about that organization back then, that they would have somebody that great as a backup quarterback. Now, to some degree, I know he didn't go there with the intention of being a backup, but Montana seemed injury prone. It looked like Montana might be nearing the end of his career, and of course, as if you followed football, you know that Montana won a couple more Super Bowls while Steve Young was the backup. So it was at that time that I gave up on the Rams, and once you do that, you know, and I went and rooted for the Niners for several years. But your love for the new team is never going to be the same as the team you grew up rooting for, and so I can't remember why I got on this subject, but the you know, I guess we're just talking about the Rams and that, but so I ended up rooting for the 49ers, and now of course I'm a Seahawk guy.
Nothing wrong with that.
About being a Seahawk guy?
Yeah.
Well, I am I fully admit that I'm a bandwagon guy. My moment came when Hasselbeck said, predicted that they were going to go and score against the Packers in that overtime game in the playoffs. I was listening to it, and I thought, okay, yeah, this is my team now. And, of course, he threw an interception that they went home. Seattle went home that year.
Yep.
Which was I don't think the expectations that team was going to be a Super Bowl winner, though. So you were a fan. Was that crushing when that happened?
It was more crushing that he said that.
Oh, really? You didn't like it?
Yeah. He said it, and then I guess it's more the fact that he just threw the interception, and the whole game that we lost it. He said it, and then we lost the game.
Yeah. Well, there is no question that is a stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. But I will say that's what made me a fan. Because if you're going to be stupid, I'd rather you be stupid than that way than by stepping on somebody on the field or something like that. But anyway, so I'm serious. I can't remember why I even brought all of this up, and it really probably doesn't matter. I am the rest of this show, and we're going to go to a break in a couple minutes here. But the rest of this show is going to be about road trips, and we're going to start with Las Vegas, and I'm also going to talk about In-N-Out hamburgers, and if I get to it, Cincinnati, which is not a normal subject matter for a radio show, and then road trips generally. And maybe I'll start with that, how I fell in love with the notion of road trips, and how it's just not as easy to do anymore, not just because I'm 52 years old, but it costs a lot of money with gas and that kind of thing. So when we come back, we'll take a road trip here on Field of Steve.
What it is ain't exactly clear.
As Kitsap County's largest maintenance provider, Team Innovative in Paulsbo provides commercial and residential maintenance to hundreds of millions of dollars of local real estate. With services including parking lot maintenance and street cleaning to landscape and design, Team Innovative is committed to using a green approach and following a strong environmental conscience. Team Innovative Services, 697-6858, or visit them online at getinnovative.net. Team Innovative Services, get serious, get innovative.
Brothers Power Sports has been a locally owned family business in Bremerton since 1949. From new and pre-owned motorcycles, ATVs, scooters, boats, and watercraft, to parts and service and apparel, Brothers Power Sports is committed to being your source for all your motorsports needs. And they're a proud sponsor of the Habitat for Humanity of Kitsap County. Brothers Power Sports, 5205 1st Street in Bremerton, and online at brotherspowersports.com. Stop in and feel the difference at Brothers Power Sports in Bremerton.
The Home Buyers Association of Kitsap County is an association of professional builders, subcontractors, service providers, and purveyors representing the home building industry. For more than 50 years, the Home Builders Association of Kitsap County has provided information, education, and services that promote the health and welfare of the home building industry. As leaders of the industry, the Home Builders Association of Kitsap County fosters safe, affordable housing and addresses issues affecting our industry. To find out more, visit them online at kitsapHBA.com.
Getting married, entertaining clients, or maybe you're just having a bash with your friends. No matter the occasion, make sure you plug into the tunes with E&M Entertainment. There are tons of DJs out there, but how many of them want to get to know you beforehand so they can play your soundtrack at your event at your kind of price? It's more than just a great selection. E&M plays your great selection, and that makes all the difference. So call 425-971-8078. That's 425-971-8078 for E&M Entertainment.
The Loft at Latitude 47.7 in Paulsbo is an amazing way to enjoy a night out on the town. At The Loft, they feature a full menu including fresh seafood, amazing appetizers, and tempting desserts. Plus, with happy hour daily, you can enjoy great discounts on draft beer, house wines, and selected menu items. The Loft at Latitude 47.7, open 7 days a week at 18779 Front Street in Paulsbo, overlooking the beautiful Paulsbo waterfront. The Loft at Latitude 47.7, Paulsbo's only waterfront restaurant and bar.
So I figured out how I got down that rabbit hole of talking about teams that I used to love and now hate, and it has to do with Donald Sterling. It goes back to him. Don't all of our conversation always go back to Donald Sterling? Everything involving giving up on a team somehow is going to get back to Donald Sterling. All right. So the Donald Sterling story. Well, as I mentioned, my uncle worked at the Coliseum and at the sports arena. I think it was kind of an avocation. It was something extra to do. I don't know that he needed the money, but maybe. I don't know. But I think he had a lot of fun doing it. And there were a couple times where I got good concert tickets because of his connections there at the sports arena. I got to see The Who. And actually, I take that back. I didn't get The Who tickets through him, but I got tickets to see Styx, which tells you something about my former music tastes and about how old I am, because I saw Styx when it was cool to see Styx. In 1981, that was the Paradise Theater tour. At any rate, the Clippers, eventually, they started as the San Diego Clippers, I believe. I don't have Wikipedia in front of me, which of course we know is the source of all truth. And they moved up to Los Angeles, and they were sharing the market with the LA Lakers, which meant that they were not going to get any love at all. It was going to be hard. You would have to have the circumstances that you have right now. The ownership issue aside, you've got a very good Clippers team. Who my friend Byron, who is as much of a basketball expert as I am, if not more so, he thinks that they're probably the team best suited to beat the Heat in the NBA Finals if we have NBA Finals that are worth watching. Assuming the Heat make it as well. The Heat are pretty loaded, so that's a good chance. At any rate, the Clippers, they have a good team now, but for years and years and years, and if you've been following this at all, they have not. And a lot of that has been because of the owner. And so it's no mystery to me why the Clippers fan base is a relatively bandwagon group, because number one, the Lakers dominated that town for years and years before. When they moved from Minneapolis, they owned they owned the market. They were great for years. It took them a while to win a championship. They lost a lot to the Celtics in the 60s. But my first NBA game was going to see the Lakers. I think I saw them play the Sonics, and I also saw them play Cleveland as a kid. And I saw them the year I saw them play Cleveland was the year that the Lakers won 33 games in a row, and they had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Jerry West no, I'm sorry, they did not have Kareem then. They had Wilt Chamberlain. This is what's aging me. Yeah, West and Jabbar, I don't think ever played together. So it was an awesome team, and that was the market the Clippers entered. And why they thought they could make it in L.A., I'm not sure, but they tried, and they had virtually no success, except you'd have guys like Billy Crystal going to the games because they were cheaper tickets and he could sit on the floor. And I think if you were a Clipper fan back then, it was because of all the other teams that you could watch come through and not pay as much as you would have to go see the Lakers play those teams. So that was kind of how it worked. If you went to a Laker game, you went to see the Lakers. If you went to see the Clippers, it was because of the other team that was in town. And so I think Donald Sterling rode that. It made him enough money for a time. And then they built a new arena, and somehow they became winners. But my uncle, as I said, worked for the sports arena, and he had to work a lot with people that would come to games. And there was a time when, and I don't think Sterling went to all the games, but somebody bought tickets near Sterling. And it wasn't to be near him, and they were just very good seats. But they had purchased them. They had bought them fair and square. And, you go to a game with the understanding that if you buy a ticket to sit somewhere, that you're actually going to be allowed to sit there. And Donald Sterling came to the game. He had his own set of tickets, but he had happened to bring more people to this game than he normally did, and he demanded that those people sitting in those other seats be sent somewhere else. And it wasn't like they were going to go somewhere comparable. And this was, and that's about it. And he was successful. He was able to get them out of those seats. He did own the team, and so he had control over where these folks would be, they would be sitting. From my understanding, they weren't tough folks. But like I said, I don't. My uncle isn't around anymore to tell the story. But I heard that story, and this was after reading all these other things. And so this whole incident with the racism, the racist comments, it came on the heels of that. For me, it came on the heels of having read about the other stuff that he's done as owner, being cheap and other things. I didn't know about the landlord lawsuit. I knew Elgin Baylor had sued him, but it seemed like there were a lot of things they couldn't prove about Donald Sterling over the years. The NBA might have wished to get rid of him for a long time. So the first thing I want to point out is that we're not talking about a guy that's revered. It's not like we're talking about somebody who's had a reputation that matches his last name. He has not had a Sterling reputation. He's had a sterling reputation in another way. Second, what he said and the consequences he has faced have not violated his right to free speech. I want to make sure that that's clear. Free speech, the principle that we cherish in this country to some degrees more than others at times. He did not. That deals with government coming down on somebody, and government did not. Nor did government come down on Bill Maher when he said that we're the cowards because we lob missiles at people, when he had his show Politically Incorrect and eventually paid a price for those comments. We are not immune from suffering the consequences of our speech. Where I think there was a threat once to limit free speech came in a speech I actually heard in Portland, which won't surprise some of you, I suppose. I went to, I had just moved there. This was in 1994, and Vera Katz was the mayor. And there was an event, I think it was the Portland Bite, and they had music down there, and there was a stage there, I think, called Speak Up for Diversity, something like that. And there were bands playing and everything. It was a pretty cool event. It was pretty nice. It was fun. And some woman representing the mayor's office, it wasn't the mayor herself, she got up and spoke at the Speak Up for Diversity stage and said, we just have to not allow people to say things that are offensive. And I thought to myself, what? It's one of those things where first of all, you can have this kind of conversation on a social level and it might be fine, but this was somebody from the mayor's office, and I thought, well, maybe she just misspoke. But then she said it again. We just can't allow people to say things that are offensive or inappropriate, whatever the word she was. And my thought at the time was I wanted to yell the Queen Mother of all dirty words at her, and not because I was angry at her, just because I thought, well, I'm going to say something inappropriate, which now probably wouldn't be that big a deal. This is 20 years ago, but 20 years ago when the F word meant something. So I didn't do it. I wrote a letter to the mayor's office saying, we got to let people say what they're going to say, and so they can, first of all, so that we know what people actually think, and hopefully people will speak truth about what they believe, but also that once they speak it, then it's something we can deal with. And I think what Donald Sterling did was speak. He revealed himself in big ways, and people are making. Oh, well, this is something else I'll get to. But what he was saying was actually asking somebody to be discriminatory. And we all ask people to be discriminatory. In other words, don't say that word in public or something like that. He was asking this woman to not be friends with black people in public. That is just that goes beyond saying a naughty word. And then finally, I guess the one point I want to make: people have made the case that, hey, these were private tapes that were revealed, and that there is some discrepancy on how, whether he knew he was being recorded, those kind of things, and to some degree, yeah, it does matter. But in the end, I kind of come from a place where I think the racism was worse. And yes, if it was a private conversation, just as Alec Baldwin's private conversation with his daughter and Mel Gibson's conversation with his former wife, those were private conversations as well. In both cases, in Alec Baldwin's case, he was leaving a voice message, so obviously he knew he was being recorded. Mel Gibson, not so clear, but it does kind of reveal things, and this is kind of sadly or unsadly, this is kind of the age we live in, and we have to be careful what we say in almost any situation. And so whether he was betrayed, he may have been betrayed in that conversation, and that's all good and fine, and somebody should probably pay a price for that if he was betrayed or if anything illegal was done. But still, it's not worse than the racism. I just can't. The owner of a professional basketball team telling someone to not bring black people to the game and to not pose in pictures publicly with black people, that is just amazing. Just an amazing thought to have, even for somebody who's 81 years old. So I think that's where we are with that whole issue, and it's interesting. It's like I've never really been tempted to root for the Clippers before, and I like the guys on the team and everything like that. But it'll be interesting to watch as they play out. I don't know, Caleb, if you have any different thoughts on this, and I don't want to beat this to a pulp because we're kind of late to this conversation, right?
It's kind of weird because you had Sterling, who had the racist comments, and you had Cliven Bundy, who had racist comments. I can defend, and I actually did last week on Outlaw's show. I defended Bundy because, from my perspective, listening to what he had to say, I won't go into the details, but I felt after listening to his entire conversation, like, oh, I understand what this guy's saying. With Sterling, it's just he comes out so racist, and I gotta agree with you. It's like you said, whether he was legally recorded or knew or whatnot, that's kind of different than his whole racism that he was at least showing.
Yeah, I agree that there's a difference between him and Bundy, and I think the one thing you can say about Bundy is that he was enjoying his audience for a while there, and he finally stepped in it. And what you say is true. That I kind of understand. I look at Bundy as saying things that I probably have relatives who would say much the same thing. Maybe the wording would be different. I see what he was trying to say. He said it badly. He said it very well. And when I say I see what he was saying, I see what he was trying to say. And I think we beat up on people a lot of times for saying things badly, and that's why it's risky to even do something like run a radio show like this. I think first of all, I got to state very clear that no, I don't think people who were slaves were better off than people who were on public assistance. But an old man saying that, an old man who had talked about the overthrow of the government or not recognizing the U.S. government. Well, I think what he was saying there was kind of the least of our concerns. But I think it was a way of piling on to Mr. Bundy. I don't know anything. I don't know a whole lot about that man. And in fact, I was in Cincinnati when all of this was going on. I was kind of out of the loop on the whole Cliven Bundy situation because I didn't have a whole lot of access to or interest in public media. I can't tell you how nice it is to be removed from the 24-hour news cycle for a while.
You know what? It's I go through my chemo once a month, and I pretty much remove myself from society during that week. And it is some of the most peaceful time. I just ignore people, and people leave me alone because they know, like, oh, he must be going through his chemo, so he's probably not feeling pretty well. And it's really peaceful.
Yeah, I totally relate to that, and hopefully you don't have to go through chemo to find that peace. And I'm part, and I understand I'm part of the problem. I'm on Twitter and Facebook all the time, and I'm feeding people with 24-hour news information. And there was recently there is a book out now, and I don't remember the name of it, but basically the guy's premise is that we should read newspapers once a day, and then just turn ourselves off from news, and let the newspapers figure it out, the next morning. And that's the way we used to be. I mean, I guess we would watch the nightly newscast, but
you know what I like? I love the newspaper. I love the news, but there's some things. It's like, were you here when the school almond jar caught on fire?
No, I think that was that same week.
Yeah, so I was here, and it was 2:00 in the morning. The school caught fire, and I actually got on the Kitsap Sun site and was like, "Hey, I was like, I see smoke, and is there something going on?" And I think I was the first person to actually say something because I heard the sirens, and it's right across the street from my house. And I was actually over there, snap pictures before they had said anything. And because I finally was like, it's like I don't usually run when I see sirens or anything like that, but like that's my kid's school. I'm gonna go see what's going on.
Right.
And little updates like that, like, hey, there was a fire or something like that. Don't worry, it's under control. I like getting those little updates. Those are nice to have when there's something big like that going on.
When it's important to you. Yeah, and I will tell you that at 2:00 in the morning, there's nobody in the newsroom.
Yeah.
people that are in the newsroom are passing through. Now that's not true with. I'm sure Cairo has people there around the clock, and Como most definitely does, but I'm sure Cairo does too.
Yeah, actually, Cairo used. I took one of the pictures I took. I posted, and they actually used it. They reposted it to their site.
Yeah, it might have even been on their. I can't remember if their TV and their. Their TV. The Cairo TV is not the same as Cairo Radio. So it was the radio station that used your.
No, it was a TV.
Oh, it was TV.
Yeah,
okay.
It was TV.
Yeah, so they might have even posted it on TV as well. So, way to go! You're famous. Did they credit you?
I don't know. I know they posted it to their Facebook because they asked for permission to do it. But I didn't really. I saw that and I was like, okay, yeah, you guys can go ahead and use it. Whatever, it's fine.
So was it flaming? Was it blazing when you? How did you even hear about it?
Well, it was right across the street.
Oh, okay.
I mean, literally, all I heard was sirens, and
okay.
I turned on my phone. I got a little police scanner on there and listened, and all I heard was, hey, there's a fire alarm going off at Almond Jar, and looked outside and just a big cloud of smoke at 2 a.m.
So you heard about it the old-fashioned way, the sirens.
Yeah. Well, so I around here we got 3 elderly places, like right next to me. And so I hear police sirens all the time, but they usually shut them.
Because they're coming to get somebody.
Yeah. And so I'm used to hearing sirens, but they typically shut them off before they get real close.
Yeah.
They don't come blaring down the street with the sirens going or anything like that. It's different when I hear sirens and the sirens are still going and they're not shutting off.
Yeah.
And they're close. I know something's definitely going on, and it freaks me out.
Okay. So that's one of my favorite stories from my youth. Was at one time there were sirens that went down the street, and I was at a friend's house, my next door neighbor's house, and I was listening to Springsteen. I was listening to some music, and I heard sirens go down the street. Well, my friend just took off and ran right after him, and I just thought, I don't care what's going on. And it was around the corner. My parents were really upset. My parents, first of all, they didn't love rock and roll. So they weren't thrilled that I was in there listening to some music, and I didn't really particularly like Springsteen at the time. But the other thing was, like, I don't care about chasing ambulances anymore, and they kind of went, oh yeah, I guess that's true. But no, I remember as a kid, we heard the sirens, and they were close, and they weren't stopping, like you say. Mm-hmm. We went around the corner. And it was a home, and it was what they call fully engulfed.
Yeah.
That is just an amazing sight when you see a house completely on fire, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It can cause you to lose sleep for.
We had growing up. I lived up by Esquire Hills, up in that neighborhood up there.
Yeah.
And the time that I lived there for probably 12 or 13 years. There was 2 houses on my street that went up in flames, and one of them was almost completely taken out by the flames, and the other one was just the back half of the house was taken out.
Did you get to see the fire? I mean,
Yes.
did you see them on fire?
Both of them.
It's frightening, isn't
Both
it?
of them.
It's,
Oh yeah. Well, it's like, is it going to jump from one house to the other?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
you know,
I
and-
mean, it's spectacular too. You know, in the same. I mean, it's like I love fireworks, and
Yeah.
I'm always, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm always a little worried. You know, one's gonna fall down and shoot at us. But that's a controlled blaze thing, and when you see something that's really not supposed to be burning the way it is, that is something else. And growing up in Southern California, every few years, there would be these times where, if you were in a valley, you would look around you and it looked like the whole world was on fire, because, you know, up in the San Bernardino Mountains, there would be fires up there, and you could see flames from down in the valley, and there'd be a fire some other way, and the whole air was filled with smoke. So yeah, it's a crazy thing. But, you know, getting to, like you say, for the 24-hour news cycle, that's kind of cool to know if it's something that affects you, you know, what's going on, and I think we can serve that purpose. I think where we get into issues is when we're giving an audience to one of last night they had the White House, I think it was the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and Obama was speaking at it, and one of his jokes about CNN was, well, he said he just got back from a trip from Malaysia, and he said the things you got to do to get on CNN, obviously because of the Malaysian Airlines flight, and he said, I think they're still looking for their table, and it was hilarious because the CNN has done nothing but search, cover details of this thing, and it's really interesting of this plane that went down somewhere or disappeared. That's all we know at this point. What's really interesting is that they have been criticized for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they keep going. It's like they're committed to this, and so there must be they must know something that the rest of us don't know. The rest of us who are making fun of them, we don't know. We don't see the ratings, and they must be pulling off some pretty high.
Yeah, it's been so many weeks now. It doesn't make sense to me to keep just taking the same subject over and over and over again. And
well, especially since we don't know when this is ever going to end.
Yeah.
When they did this with the O.J. Simpson trial, and this was brought up on another show I listened to. They did this on O.J. Simpson, and we knew that was going to end. We knew there was going to be a verdict, and they could milk it for a little while, but they.
Still, even in that, there's so much more pressing news out there, especially on a national level, that the big networks, they get focused. It's kind of like when election time comes, they get so focused on elections that they just kind of shove everything else aside, and all you hear is election stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is that we'll have shows 24 hours all talking about the same thing.
Yep.
And I don't know, I suppose you get some new angles, and maybe there are some TV addicts out there who can correct me about the value of this, especially when I'm one of those who contributes to the 24-hour news cycle to some degree. But I'm still a print guy at heart, and we write our stories, and I can go home and watch the new. I guess my newest. I'm watching Arrested Development again, thanks to Netflix, and also my son turned me on to the show Chuck, and so.
I used to love that show.
Did you watch it all the way to the end?
All the way to the end.
So is it worth going to the? Yeah, because
Yes.
that's one of the. What my son told me is that it's one of those shows that got better as it got.
Yeah,
further along.
They almost canceled it after the second season, I think it was, and I forgot what exactly happened. I think they just had enough people that were like, "Hey, no, don't cancel it." That they kept it and finished it out. So
that's kind of what happened with the rest of Development. The Fox held on to that show a lot longer than most networks would have, because they were committed to the idea that, hey, this is a good show. And I mean, and I always thought Chuck had a good premise. I just never thought to devote an hour of my life every week. We did it with Lost, but it is just so different now. And this is, here I am talking about the 24-hour news cycle, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter, not so much, but Facebook all the time, and I'm checking news sites all the time. So I'm part of the problem, is that I'm not only as a contributor to the 24-hour news cycle, as an audience member of that cycle. I'm not immune to being suckered in by all of this, and I haven't. We don't have CNN or MSNBC or Fox at home, so I haven't been suckered in to the Malaysian Airlines thing. In a way, I'm kind of glad they're doing it, because I would like to believe that we are going to find out what happened to that plane. But it might be, I think it was Air France. They flew from Brazil to, they were flying from Brazil to France one time, and there was a plane went down.
You talking about in the Andes Mountains?
No, actually, it went down in the ocean. This was 5-10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And for a couple of years, they had their conclusions about why it went down, and I think if you go to Netflix now, there was even a show that explained how they thought it went down, and then they actually found the plane and found the black box, and they had to come up with different conclusions, because you can hear the pilots talking to each other, and it might even get into some of the stuff that Malcolm Gladwell talked about in there was a book he wrote that had to do with how in different cultures people don't talk to the superiors in a way that would might seem like it was disrespectful. So, at any rate, I kind of get and here we've been doing this for several minutes, talking about the 24-hour news cycle and some distaste with that. As it turns out, the other night, I have a story that ran today on Common Core, and I wasn't going to get it done by, our normal deadline times are like 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and this was for a Sunday story, so I actually had a little more time as long as I got it done by 6 on Saturday, but I don't like to go into the office on Saturday. And so I had to go to a surprise party on Friday night, and I went to that, and after the party I went into work, and I actually was in the newsroom at 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday night, Saturday morning, but it's a lonely place in there. We are still, and I would imagine there's going to come a day when that's going to end, because there is going to be somebody sitting there listening to the scanner in case something happens.
Well, I can tell you, I've been in there at night. My old roommate used to do IT work down there, or was one of the IT guys, and there's a couple times I went down there with him, and for whatever, the press was having problems or something went down, and it is dead in the middle of the night down there.
Yeah, it's almost eerie quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it doesn't. You wouldn't. I don't know. You look at a place like, and if you go in there in the day, it's pretty bustling. It's not as loud as it used to be, because we don't have AP tickers making all that kind of noise and that kind of thing. And we have lots of TVs, but we don't ever have the volume on. We don't use typewriters anymore, so the keys are even quieter and all of that. So it's not as loud as it used to be. But it is still, pretty busy during the day. Now there are there are times during the day when you'll go and every reporter is almost every reporter is out somewhere, either to lunch or covering something. It's not like everybody goes to lunch together. But at any rate, are we up against the next break?
If you want to take it, we'll take it.
Why don't we take a break, and I'm going to talk about road trips for real when we come back. I'll talk about Vegas and then and road trips generally.
Bring some understanding here today. Make it loud.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Some Democrats are criticizing House Speaker John Boehner's move to open an investigation into the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi in September of 2012. As NPR's Sonari Glinton reports, the Speaker called for a special investigative panel to look into the attack in Libya that left 4 Americans dead.
Emails were released that shed light on how the White House responded to the attack. Republicans are calling them a smoking gun and say that the White House was playing politics before that year's presidential election. Here's New Hampshire Senator Kelly Ayotte speaking on Fox News Sunday.
And the latest revelation from the White House really tells us that we need this select committee.
Here's House Democrat Adam Schiff speaking on the same program.
I don't think it makes sense for us to give this select committee any more credibility than it deserves, and frankly, I don't think it deserves very much.
Schiff says Democrats need not participate in the latest investigation since previous ones found no wrongdoing. Sonari Glenton, NPR News.
South Sudan's army is back in control of the northern city of Bentiu after rebels seized it 2 weeks ago and slaughtered hundreds. NPR's Gregory Warner reports from South Sudan's capital of Juba.
An army spokesman said that government troops recaptured the town after a day-long battle with rebel forces. The regional capital, Bentiu, is an oil hub that has changed hands several times since this conflict began in December. Rebels made up of defected soldiers and a tribal militia retook the town last month and killed more than 500 civilians. Some rebel commanders used a local radio station to incite killings and rape along ethnic lines. But the massacre of men, women, and children was carried out in the name of revenge. Over the last 5 months of this conflict, government soldiers have also targeted civilians based on ethnicity. Secretary of State John Kerry visited South Sudan to urge both sides that there can be no military solution to end this war. Gregory Warner, NPR News, Juba.
LA Mayor Eric Garcetti says he doesn't think LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling will sell the team without a fight. Sterling was fined $2.5 million and banned for life from the games for making racist remarks. And NBA Commissioner Adam Silver wants him forced to sell the team. But Garcetti told CBS's Face the Nation he expects an ugly legal battle, and he says that would be a problem.
America stood up against the racist remarks that we heard, and I think it was a brave step forward for this country. He needs to be a part of that healing. To fight this for a long time only means the value of the team goes down, but more importantly, that this debate rages on forever.
Meanwhile, the Clippers advanced to the second round of the NBA playoffs yesterday. A strong magnitude 6.0 earthquake hit near Tokyo today, but officials say no tsunami warnings were issued. The U.S. Geological Survey says the quake hit early Monday morning local time and was located 61 miles south of Tokyo. This is NPR News. A day of mourning in Afghanistan today for the hundreds of people killed in a landslide last week. Officials say it will be impossible to dig all the bodies out of the mud, which is now considered a gravesite. 700 families are out of their homes after the mud swept through their village, and the threat of flooding is also an issue. The first openly gay bishop in the Anglican Communion has announced he's getting a divorce. As NPR's Ramona Martinez reports, the election of Gene Robinson as Bishop of New Hampshire in 2003 alienated conservative Anglicans and diverged from thousands of years of Christian tradition.
Hundreds of parishes left the American Episcopal Church in protest of Robinson's consecration and aligned themselves with more conservative branches of the greater church. The Anglican Communion is made up of international branches of the Church of England, which share a common faith but do not have to agree on every issue. For example, the Church of England has only recently allowed women to be elected as bishops, while female bishops have existed in the Episcopal Church for decades. Robinson officially married his partner when it became legal in New Hampshire. In his editorial for the Daily Beast, Robinson wrote that his belief in marriage is undiminished by his divorce, and that love can endure, even if a marriage cannot. Ramona Martinez, NPR News, Washington.
Former President George H.W. Bush is being honored by the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum in Boston. The elder Bush was awarded a Profile in Courage Award today for agreeing as president to raise taxes to confront a spiraling deficit. That decision angered conservatives who denounced him for breaking his campaign promise not to raise taxes. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News in Washington.
As Kitsap County's largest maintenance provider, Team Innovative in Paulsbo provides commercial and residential maintenance to hundreds of millions of dollars of local real estate. With services including parking lot maintenance and street cleaning to landscape and design, Team Innovative is committed to using a green approach and following a strong environmental conscience. Team Innovative Services, 697-6858, or visit them online at getinnovative.net. Team Innovative Services, get serious, get innovative.
Brothers Power Sports has been a locally owned family business in Bremerton since 1949. From new and pre-owned motorcycles, ATVs, scooters, boats, and watercraft to parts and service and apparel, Brothers Power Sports is committed to being your source for all your motorsports needs. And they're a proud sponsor of the Habitat for Humanity of Kitsap County. Brothers Power Sports, 5205 First Street in Bremerton, and online at brotherspowersports.com. Stop in and feel the difference at Brothers Power Sports in Bremerton.
The Home Buyers Association of Kitsap County is an association of professional builders, subcontractors, service providers, and purveyors representing the home building industry. For more than 50 years, the Home Builders Association of Kitsap County has provided information, education, and services that promote the health and welfare of the home building industry. As leaders of the industry, the Home Builders Association of Kitsap County fosters safe, affordable housing and addresses issues affecting our industry. To find out more, visit them online at kitsapHBA.com.
Getting married, entertaining clients, or maybe you're just having a bash with your friends. No matter the occasion, make sure you plug into the tunes with E&M Entertainment. There are tons of DJs out there, but how many of them want to get to know you beforehand so they can play your soundtrack at your event at your kind of price? It's more than just a great selection. E&M plays your great selection, and that makes all the difference. So call 425-971-8078. That's 425-971-8078 for E&M Entertainment.
The Loft at Latitude 47.7 in Paulsbo is an amazing way to enjoy a night out on the town. At The Loft, they feature a full menu including fresh seafood, amazing appetizers, and tempting desserts. Plus, with Happy Hour Daily, you can enjoy great discounts on draft beer, house wines, and selected menu items. The Loft at Latitude 47.7, open 7 days a week at 18779 Front Street in Paulsbo, overlooking the beautiful Paulsbo waterfront. The Loft at Latitude 47.7, Paulsbo's only waterfront restaurant and bar.
And we're back. This is Field of Steve, which soon could be some other name. I'm still thinking about that, mulling over that one. At any rate, I mentioned that the show was going to be about road trips, and part of this comes from Edge Media Source, Outlaw Radio Networks. Kevin just coming back from Vegas, kind of reminded me of it. But I also went to Cincinnati, which is no offense to people in Ohio, but it's probably not a place people would think that, you know, I'm going to go on vacation, I'm going to go to Cincinnati. Well, it wasn't a vacation. It was a work trip, and it threw a wrench into the schedule a little bit, but it was a great trip. And I was talking to Caleb a little bit off the air about the fact that I asked him if he likes road trips, and he does. You have any particular that you know, now growing up here, see, and this is one of the points I was going to make, that now that I live here, it's a little harder for me to you know how some days you'll feel like you just want to go for a drive.
Yeah.
So do you do that?
I used to a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Where would you go?
I just drive around.
Okay.
Drive out to the ocean.
Okay, so like out to Ocean Shores or something like that. Yeah.
Westport. I love going out to Westport. I love it a lot better than Ocean Shores.
Okay.
But small road trips, but it's gotten so expensive for gas.
That was the other issue. Yeah, it costs a lot if you're going to go somewhere, and I have to think about that in ways that I didn't used to before.
Yeah, and my dad used to take me. We just go drive for hours, and I'd be like, "Where are we going?" He's like, "Well, we're just going to go for a drive." And, you know, we ended up in Port Angeles and do the 101 loop, the short version or something like that, just for the fun of it, just to see the scenery. And that was stuff he used to love to do with me.
How old are you?
I am 26.
Oh, okay. So when you were a kid, this was back at a time when gas was, I mean, we probably complained about gas when it got over, $1.50 or something like that. But, yeah, gas was. In fact, I just, in doing the story for Common Core, there was this one question this one section that dealt with solar power, and it showed an essay from the 70s and one from 2000, and one of the predictions in the one in the 70s is that solar power is going to end up being cheaper than, fossil fuels, and we went through a period in the 80s and the 90s where that absolutely could not be argued. and plus solar power never really got cheap. But the fact was, I mean, we could drive anywhere, and I grew up kind of what you're talking about, living in Southern California on Sundays especially. Mom and Dad would say, "Well, let's go for a ride." And I would actually like going on these things, and a lot of times it was because we were, if we were going to go for a ride, we were going to stop at Tasty Freeze, or which is equivalent to Dairy Queen, or someplace like that. We'd probably stop and get a treat somewhere. But even if we didn't, it was just cool to get out and go see something new. And so I have a harder time with that. On Monday we had it was the start of some really nice weather here, and I was off work that day, and I actually had to run into the office for one quick little thing, and when I got out, it was so sunny. I'm like, it overwhelmed me. Oh, it's time for a ride. Well, I went up to Paulsbo, and I was thinking I was going to go to Hansville, and then I thought, wait a second, let me go pick up my kids because they were out of school by then, and we went up to the beach in Hansville. It was so cool.
Point no point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we just hung out, and there was hardly anybody else there.
That's surprising.
Yeah. Well, it was a Monday afternoon, and it was later in the day, and oddly, it was really kind of cold when I got there, but then the wind stopped, and I actually got a little warm, so that was cool. But it's, living around. Okay, so like I said, lived in Southern California. We would go driving around there, and there were always new developments to go look at, and you could go find a little bit of different scenery. And then I moved to Utah, and when I went to college, and we would go. There are a lot of canyons to go up there that you can go. Look at the streams and the rivers and that, or you could go out in the middle of the desert. And when I was older and living in Utah, my brother moved up there. There was one time where he was heartbroken over a girlfriend who was just being weird, and so he just said, "Hey, can we go for a drive?" And so we did, and we drove all night. We got on the road and we headed east, and we went far enough that it was just like, you know what, we better make it to Colorado before we turn around. And so we drove all the way to Colorado, went in there. It was the middle of the night. There was nothing going on. There was nothing going on anywhere. But then we got to Colorado, turned around, came back, and these road trips I would go on. There was one night when I was in college, when I was living in Provo, I decided I wanted to see if I could make it to Salt Lake without getting on the freeway, and it was such a sense of accomplishment. I was working at the college's bowling alley, and this was not a night that I was behind, unsticking pins from the machine that would dump the pins, or having to push bowling balls back into the system so that they would go back to the people who were bowling, which was kind of a frequent thing there. I was actually working the desk. I was spraying the bowling shoes and handing them out to people. And after work, it was like 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday night. I decided I wanted to go see if I could make it to Salt Lake without getting on the freeway, and I found a way to do it, and it was the greatest sense of accomplishment. But again, it was one of those times when there are no stores open, and part of my routine for going on road trips is that there has to be plenty of stuff to munch on and that. But
that is very important, by the way.
Having stuff to munch on?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's a little dangerous my age now. I am of considerable girth, and so the stuff I liked was sodas. I mean, do you have a favorite? Do you have a go-to?
Yeah. I've always liked my energy drinks. A few years ago, I drove down to Nevada, and with my girlfriend at the time, and we did that drive. We were going to Fallon, Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like a 26-hour drive, and I drove most of that drive straight through. And I traded out. She drove a tiny bit, but it was mostly me, and I pretty much energy drinks and pretzels. That was stopping at vending machines on the way. Like, okay, I'm gonna get some pretzels and an energy drink and be good for the next 4 hours.
So between here and there, it was 26 hours?
Yeah, something like that. 20 to 26 hours.
So
I don't remember the exact time.
So you had now where is Fallon?
Fallon is, God, we went down all the way through Oregon into California, and then it's from California. We went through the mountains in California. I think it was about 4 hours inside of Nevada from there. It's Fallon is it's a military base down there.
So and that was why you went.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard of it. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. It's not like
it's the Navy's Top Gun training school.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, interesting. So, I mean, around there, you're going to probably see jets flying over quite a bit in that.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Well, so this brings up the other thing about road trips is that one of the reasons I like going on road trips is I'm going to see something I don't see every day at home. And I will say that living here, I love it here. It's beautiful. But you've got to go a long ways to see something that you don't see around here.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I was talking about living in Utah, I'd go up into the mountains and I'd be in these, areas filled with quaking aspens and rivers or streams and big meadows and that, and being in the middle of mountains. Or if I went west, I'd be out in the middle of the desert. A couple of times my brother and I, or I alone, would just drive out to Wendover. And this was an interesting thing. Really, I mean, Wendover, Nevada is, most people probably know that as well as they know Fallon, Nevada. Because probably more people know Fallon because of the military presence there. But Wendover is just a small little casino town. It's like your first escape from Utah, and you go into a casino and you throw some money down and that. And so I made a few road trips there, and again, it was a chance to see something different. And like I say, I love it here. But it is hard to drive somewhere and see something that's markedly different from where you started.
That is true. Yeah, the military base down in Fallon it's not very big.
Really?
It's about not much bigger than maybe I'm trying to think of the place out in not Bangor.
Well, if it's like Keyport,
like Keyport,
yeah. So if it's not much, if it's Top Gun school, and if that's what it's mostly known for, then I would assume that there aren't a ton of people.
No, there's not. It is. I think when we were there, they don't have very many people stationed there. Period. I mean, they have guys who come in for training, and then the guys are gone, and then they have maybe 100 personnel that are stationed there, like year round, and then they bring people in for special training, and that's really about it. It's such a small area, and it's literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you drive past military bunker after bunker after bunker in Nevada getting there.
Well, and see that, I mean, to me, that is part of the reason to do it, is to go see something new, and it's kind of like when you're talking about taking the break from the news cycle. There is something cool about going somewhere that you don't see every day. And so I think if I lived in the Seattle area, I think once in a while I would probably take the drive I-90 over the mountains into Ellensburg and Yakima. And it isn't like there's a lot to see there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to see that you don't see on this side. And I mean, like I say, it's gorgeous here. There's trees and water everywhere. But that's the thing. There's trees and waters everywhere.
Yeah. You can't throw a rock without seeing either water or trees, pretty much.
Exactly. And yeah, I know we're really selling the value of the beauty of this place. We're really selling it. I can't say enough how much I love it here. And this is this place almost my living here is a product of some road trips that I've taken in the past. So this was clearly growing up in Los Angeles. I thought when I moved to Utah, I thought I was moving to a garden because L.A. area is all cement, except for where they've purposely planted grass and things like that. And then you go to Utah, and there were at least at that time, there were a lot of places that weren't built on, and so there'd be wild trees, and you could go into the mountains and see the aspens and everything, and it felt like a garden. And then you come up here, and oh my gosh, it's just all around you, and it just felt like paradise, especially when the weather is warm and I mean, clearly this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen, and I've always said to people, well, this is where I would want to go on vacation, so I might as well just live here. Now, 2 years ago, I did what Kevin did this week. I went to Vegas, and I picked Vegas. Well, for one reason, I had a lot of memories of Vegas. As I said, a lot of connections between where I grew up, L.A., and especially when I was 11 years old, we joined the Mormon Church, and so we had a lot of connections in Utah, and we would drive through Vegas all the time. And in fact, my parents got so they hated, and you could drive right by Vegas and not stop. I-15 goes right past Las Vegas. And you don't have to stop there, but they hated Vegas so much that they would pick this other route around to go through Henderson to get home to L.A. And they stopped doing that. They did it a couple times, and it was great. It was a nice other way to get there. But one time, my dad left his wallet on the bumper of his car when he was filling up for gas. And he drove off, and we were probably in Baker by the time he figured it out, because for whatever reason, he couldn't find his wallet. And he pulled off, and he remembered. So we had to drive all the way back to Henderson, which was no short drive. And I think because of all of that, they finally stopped doing that. They just said, "Forget it. We're just driving straight through." But when I chose Vegas a couple years ago because I was turning 50. And I should point out, because this is one thing I want to point out before I quit today. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching this live, I'm wearing a couple of items that I purposely picked because they are remnants of a couple of road trips. This T-shirt is one that I got on my trip to Cincinnati. I also got a hat there, but the hat I'm wearing, my son just his aunt and uncle, my brother and sister-in-law, they took him to New York for his his first big trip without us, and
that had to be a nice trip for him.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. He got to go. Also, they also went up to Boston, and see the sights up there, and so he got me this hat. He saw my dad was a cop, and it was one of those things. He said he saw this and he thought of my dad, and he says, "Hey, wait, I have a dad," and so he got it for me. It's an NYPD hat. It says, I think, New York's Finest on the back of it. I don't want to take it off right now because and I have to take the headphones and all that kind of thing. But I question that whether. Well, never mind. Anyway, New York's Finest are apparently they're police officers. I would think police officers are good and all. I grew up with one, but come on, they're finest. And in LA they feel the same way. Come on. Anyway, nothing against cops. Like I said, I grew up with one. And I noticed things like that. But at any rate, I wanted to go to L.A. for my 50th birthday, and I wanted to go around to see some things that I'd grown up with. But number one, 5 years earlier, we had gone to L.A. to go to Disneyland. Number two, when I did that, I went and saw some things, like my old high school and my house, and I could see how tortured and bored my kids were with that. So that was one thing. And third, it was really expensive to go to Los Angeles to fly out there. And I knew that we were going to be getting a tax return, so there would be some money available. But I kind of wanted to make my money go farther. I looked into Phoenix. Vegas wasn't my first choice, but Vegas is absolutely a bargain to fly to and to stay. And we, So
with Vegas now, and not to. I'm actually planning a trip there, hopefully for this summer. But they have this game on Facebook. It's My Vegas Slots, and Kevin got me turned on to it because you can actually get your rooms for free if you play this game.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
did he get his rooms for free?
Yes.
Really?
He did.
Did he stay? And did he stay at the Luxor?
He stayed at the Luxor. I think he stayed at 3 different hotels.
Really?
Yeah.
And he got all those rooms for free.
Yes.
Wow.
So I've actually just got my first room comped. I'm working on my second.
Well, how much do you have to spend on this online game?
You don't have to spend anything.
Really?
It's just a slot machine game, and you just have to play it. Now you can spend money if you want to, but you don't have to. You can spend money to get more chips to put in the slots, but they give you loyalty points just like if you go to a casino and you're playing at a casino. And they also have other stuff like free tickets to shows and all different kinds of stuff. But they do limit you to 3 free items every 90 days.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's 3 free hotel nights.
Exactly.
How much time do you have to spend on it to get a hotel night?
I'll tell you what, I've been playing it. Well, I don't have a life right now, so it took me.
And we all know Kevin doesn't have one either. But no, go ahead.
It took me about 4 days, 5 days, and I'm not playing constantly, just playing when I have free time because you can also play on your phone too. So yeah, about 3 to 5 days. I think Kevin said it took him like a month to get all his rooms comped for free.
Well, this is something that's something I have to look into because I guess when I start thinking about maybe going to Vegas again, but which actually isn't an absurd idea. And so the hotel was not. I mean, he was in the Luxor.
And they have other ones. They have I believe the MGM. Was it Ares, one of the newer hotels down there. They've got the New York. A lot of the big casinos. I think they've even got the Bellagio. Maybe there's quite a few.
Well, and this is typical of what I remember growing up and knowing about Vegas is that you could get everything cheap because they were banking on you paying them by losing money in the casino.
Yep.
So comped hotel rooms. Well, one of the thoughts, we didn't pay a lot. We stayed at the Circus, and I honestly figured our room would be a dump. Because the Circus. Now, this is one of the things we would drive when I would drive to school from L.A. I went to BYU, and on the road trip up from L.A. to Provo, we would stop in Vegas, and we would go to a buffet. It would be an all-you-can-stand buffet at the Circus, and the food was just awful, but it was $1. And you could eat as much as you want. And that was my memory of Circus, and it had been years since I had been there. And as it turned out, what I also remember, though, was that there were fun things for kids to see at the Circus, such as trapeze artists, those kind of things. And they had those acts in the middle of the thing. And my memory was, you could walk through the casino and you could be in the casino watching, looking up and seeing the trapeze artists and that kind of thing. Well, when we got there, that part had kind of changed, and we never did actually see trapeze artists. We saw some acrobats, and I think you probably have to be there at a prime time to see the flyers. And we actually were friends with a couple that had been flyers at the Circus in Reno and in Vegas. We were good friends. They moved up to Utah, and they were good friends of my parents for a while. In fact, they took care of my dad for a couple of years after my mom died. So anyway, Circus seemed like the best deal to take my kids to, because I thought, well, there'd be something for them to be able to enjoy while they're there. But as it turned out, Circus, I mean, the hotel was nice. It was fine. It was great. It was better than hotels I remember going to, and it had been I think in the late '80s the last time I actually stayed in a hotel in Vegas, and it was at the Stardust, which I think has been knocked down. Yeah. And the room was horrible. Oh no, I had been there in the '90s too, and I was in the Hilton, and we had one good room in the Hilton and one bad room in the Hilton. It would, we're just the. I kind of figured that they made the rooms. They purposely made the rooms look ugly so that you wouldn't spend any time in there. And so, at any rate, it seemed like a good idea to go there instead. And then, I also knew that there were things to do around Vegas that would interest the kids. We wanted to go to. I had gone to Hoover Dam as a kid with my parents on a trip when we had stayed in Vegas, and so we made the decision that we were going to go there, and so it was a great time. And there was some things that were just awesome about going to Vegas. But one thing, the one thing I would do was we went to food being a big part of. I was celebrating being 50 years old, and so I kind of wanted to be in the sun. I wanted to do something to remember, because, you know, in life, the best thing you can buy are experiences. So I wanted to create an experience for the kids and for me. And so we, like I say, we went to the dam. And when we come back, what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit more. And we did some other things there, but we kind of want to talk about taking these trips generally. So in a few minutes, we'll be back with the final segment of Field of Steve.
As Kitsap County's largest maintenance provider, Team Innovative in Paulsbo provides commercial and residential maintenance to hundreds of millions of dollars of local real estate. With services including parking lot maintenance and street cleaning to landscape and design, Team Innovative is committed to using a green approach and following a strong environmental conscience. Team Innovative Services, 697-6858, or visit them online at getinnovative.net. Team Innovative Services, get serious, get innovative.
Brothers Power Sports has been a locally owned family business in Bremerton since 1949. From new and pre-owned motorcycles, ATVs, scooters, boats, and watercraft to parts and service and apparel, Brothers Power Sports is committed to being your source for all your motorsports needs. And they're a proud sponsor of the Habitat for Humanity of Kitsap County. Brothers Power Sports, 5205 First Street in Bremerton, and online at brotherspowersports.com. Stop in and feel the difference at Brothers Power Sports in Bremerton.
The Home Buyers Association of Kitsap County is an association of professional builders, subcontractors, service providers, and purveyors representing the home building industry. For more than 50 years, the Home Builders Association of Kitsap County has provided information, education, and services that promote the health and welfare of the home building industry. As leaders of the industry, the Home Builders Association of Kitsap County fosters safe, affordable housing and addresses issues affecting our industry. To find out more, visit them online at kitsapHBA.com.
Getting married, entertaining clients, or maybe you're just having a bash with your friends. No matter the occasion, make sure you plug into the tunes with E&M Entertainment. There are tons of DJs out there, but how many of them want to get to know you beforehand so they can play your soundtrack at your event at your kind of price? It's more than just a great selection. E&M plays your great selection, and that makes all the difference. So call 425-971-8078. That's 425-971-8078 for E&M Entertainment.
The Loft at Latitude 47.7 in Paulsbo is an amazing way to enjoy a night out on the town. At The Loft, they feature a full menu including fresh seafood, amazing appetizers, and tempting desserts. Plus, with Happy Hour Daily, you can enjoy great discounts on draft beer, house wines, and selected menu items. The Loft at Latitude 47.7, open 7 days a week at 18779 Front Street in Paulsbo, overlooking the beautiful Paulsbo waterfront. The Loft at Latitude 47.7, Paulsbo's only waterfront restaurant and bar.
So we were talking about Vegas, something people don't grow tired of. I know they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but I didn't do anything that would embarrass me or some other unknown person out there. Now my kids might differ on that. Maybe I did do some stuff that was embarrassing, but it was a family trip, and so I set up I kind of set up my expectations for the week, and it was it was one of those times because it was my birthday and I was the reason we were going, that I kind of laid out the agenda for what would happen. And so we actually, Diana, my wife, she has family that lives a couple hours away in Hurricane, Utah, which is near St. George, Utah. It's a little bit north. So we stayed a couple days there, which was awesome, because then we went, I don't know if you guys have seen the show about the people breaking out of the polygamous city, basically, down in southern Utah. But we kind of drove around there one day, and that was just fascinating. And then we got into Vegas, and of course I got to go In-N-Out Hamburger, which is God's gift to hamburgers. And then the great part was that my birthday is in February, and I was in the sunshine, and it was good weather. You don't always get great weather in Vegas. especially in February. You can get there in a week where it's actually cold, and they're not immune to snow.
Yeah, I went there. Actually, my last trip to Vegas, I was 21, 22 when I went last. And we went into February.
Yeah.
And but it was 70, 75 during the day. It was actually nice. It rained out one day while we were there.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go back during summer.
No,
it's too
horrible.
hot.
Yeah, it's horrible in the summer. It's awful. We had the same experience you did. It was mostly in the 70s that week. It might, actually, I think most days were in the mid 60s. It was far better weather there than it was here.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that happened, it was a coworker, Bryn Grimley. She had said that, and I think this had happened. I think she had said this a couple of years before, that sometimes you should go somewhere in the middle of winter just to get some sunshine, to get a few days of it, just so that you have that break. And I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. And February is a perfect time. And if it's not great weather, at least it'll be somewhere different. And we went swimming. It was the first. In fact, the week we were there was the week they opened the pool. Apparently, they close it.
Yeah, they do. And I was shocked.
Yeah.
Because we were down there at 75, and we're like, the pools are closed?
Yeah, yeah.
This isn't. We're like 75 at home. Pools would be open.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we would be swimming.
Yeah, I know. In the 50 degree weather, I'm wearing shorts today, so there they would be wearing parkas. They did have them open, and that was great, being able to sit out by the pool. We actually, we did running a couple of times, and then, we did plan our time pretty well there. I mean, going to the pool was a great thing to do in the day, and then, like I said, we went to the Hoover Dam, and then one day I drove to Baker because that was the closest Bob's Big Boy, which was a place that when I was in high school, at the end of the night, after going on a date or something like that, we'd often go to Bob's Big Boy, and I wanted some hot fudge cake. And so we went out there and had lunch. That was in Baker, and I think the temperatures were in the 80s and out there. So it was a great time getting out in the sunshine. And then on the final night there, we walked the Strip, and that was when I realized just how big big that is. And I saw almost everything. I think I saw the fireworks at the the volcanoes.
Yep.
Steve Wynn's, what is that, the Mirage? Whatever it is. And then the Bellagio, they had the fountain show. Well, my youngest had to go potty. So those went off when I was inside, telling him about the... those went off when he was inside going to the bathroom. I wasn't telling him anything. I was telling him to close the door and take care of yourself in there. At any rate, it was fine, but we went on a long walk, and my other son was big into Chris Angel, and so we had to go to the Luxor and go inside, and he wanted to see that door. There's a playing card in the middle of the door there, and he wanted to see that, and he got to go into the gift shop there and buy something. And by the end of that night, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, by the way, Luxor is it's on the end of the Strip.
Yeah,
but it is. I've stayed there too. It is a phenomenal place.
Are the rooms nice?
The rooms are very nice. I went down there with my mom and my stepdad and my stepsister. I think I was 13 maybe at the time, and we were down there for a convention, but they actually have a ton of stuff for kids to do in there.
Yeah,
inside the Luxor. So very nice place.
So did you go now? When's the last time you were there?
4 years ago-ish.
So what do you think of Fremont, the Fremont district?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a place I would keep your kids away from.
Great point.
Something
nobody told us before we went.
Yes, and the only reason I say that is because and I guess it kind of depends on the age of your kids too. If they're 16, 17, keep an eye on them.
Yeah, they didn't see anything too bad.
Yeah, last time I was down there was some girl, they had like go-go dancers and stuff like that in one of the casinos. But then there's also a couple of clubs right down there last time I was there as well too.
Now I had friends that had I had friends that had lived there, and they suggested we go down there because of this big overhead canopy they have, which I guess was designed to save Fremont, because Fremont was going belly up, and so they've built this big canopy that shows a big show above your head at night. This is Old Town Vegas, and I remember thinking Old Town Vegas was kind of cool, but because the Strip has just gotten so huge, Old Town Vegas really took a nosedive, and so to save itself, they had to do something. So you have this, and they'd have a different theme show every time. And when we were there, there was a guy in the middle of the sidewalk who was, I think there was a Roy Orbison guy that was performing. Was a impersonator, and then
they have a lot of street performers down there. It gets packed down there,
and they're good. They're good.
Yeah.
I think this was a Wednesday night or whatever, but it was just sensory overload, and one of my sons was really kind of sensitive to it and just felt completely unsafe.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we went was because there was this place that served up deep fried treats, and they had $1 hot dogs and stuff like that. And my wife is a bargain Betty. And
I lived off of $1 hot dogs when I was down there.
Yeah, and they were fine. They were good. They were as advertised, and they had the deep fried Oreos and deep fried Twinkies, and I think some other things. And we thought we'd try those, and we got way too much. And those things were great. You take a bite, and that was enough. But like I said, my kid was in sensory overload. And I actually had a nephew that was living in Vegas at the time. He was about 30 years old, and he knew his way around things, and he was fine in there, and he kind of helped me walk around some of the places to get me to where I needed to go. But one of the kids went in with us because into this place where we were going to get these deep fried Oreos or whatever. We had to walk through a casino, and I mean, the kid walked 2 steps in and, hey, he can't be here. Like, oh, okay, because we had never experienced that on the Strip, but we hadn't spent a lot of time in the casinos. But yeah, the Old Town Vegas, I don't know what to think of it. I like it the way it used to be, but I can see why they had to do what they did.
Well, and they still actually got some of their slot machines down there that give you nickels and quarters and stuff like that.
I saw Kevin's post about that.
Yeah, you can't get that on the Strip.
Yeah,
they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I thought that was weird when I would go to the Indian casinos here. I think the first one I went to was in Oregon, and I played a slot machine or a blackjack machine or whatever, and it's not the same as when you don't have that money coming out to the bottom. At the same time, you don't have to deal with a bunch of nickels.
That is true. But do you really trust it more, or do you trust it less?
No, the problem is you don't feel like it's money.
There is that.
Yeah, you feel like you're playing with numbers, and I think that gives the casino an advantage.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So. Which is, hey, fine. They're providing the entertainment for us, so good for them. They found a way to make it work. I think I underestimated how long the Strip is, though, because by the time I was done walking the whole thing, and it has grown so much, I was just beat, just exhausted.
Yeah,
it's that is a haul down there, but it's a lot of fun.
We walked, last time I was down there, we walked a little over half the Strip in a day, and I was wearing nice dress shoes when I first got there the first day. And by the time we got back to our hotel room, because we walked down, I think we walked all the way to Luxor, and we were staying at Treasure Island. So we were kind of at that midway point, and so walking down to Luxor and coming back, we were all beat.
Yeah.
Especially with the shoes we were wearing.
Yeah.
It was not a comfortable walk at all.
The thing that's cool about Vegas is that you're going there on vacation, so they're catering to tourists, and so that part is nice. And this is really an unfair comparison because nobody goes to Cincinnati for vacation. Well, some people do, I'm sure.
Hey, I've been to Wisconsin for a vacation.
Do you have family there?
I do.
Well, see, there you go.
I've also been to Iowa
for vacation.
I had hockey there, but
okay, Well, I think I would go to Iowa on vacation, and I would like to go see where they filmed Field of Dreams.
Oh, yeah, that's
I'd like to go play baseball.
They also have when I was there, they probably still don't have it. I don't know. They had a age restriction on being out after a certain time.
Oh, in Iowa?
Yeah. We're like, so we're here and we can't go outside after it was like 9 o'clock or something like that if you were under 16.
Okay.
Or whatever it was. We're like, okay, so there's a bunch of kids here to play hockey, but we can't be outside of the hotel room.
Right.
Without an adult. Yeah.
Are you sure that was the state, or was it the people who took you?
No, it was a state.
Wow.
And because everybody was complaining about it, like, why are we having this? Why are we having our nationals here for this year? This is terrible, And,
oh, wow.
And nobody liked it. They never went back to go have it there again after that.
I had cousins who were just up here. They were staying at a hotel near the airport, and they made sure their kids were in there. Now, this was the first night, because I'm not sure what it was like the following nights, because they had events they had to go to. But the first night, those kids, they had to be in their rooms by 9:30, and they had techniques to figure out if anybody broke out of their room after 9:30. It is, that's one of those things where you just don't want to lose track of somebody that you're responsible for. And when you're 16 years old, the last thing you want to do is be taped inside your hotel room.
Well, I'll tell you what, playing hockey for so many years, the kids are definitely a different kind of crowd.
Yeah.
Very rowdy, very rambunctious. I mean, you're talking about guys who, kids and adults, like you take people that have played together for years, so everybody hangs out with everybody, and there was always parties every night that everybody went to, and then we'd all get up at 3 a.m. to go play again, because that was the time the game started. It's like, all right, it's 3 o'clock, we got to go play. We've only slept for 2 hours.
The games would start at what time? Like 5?
No, we have some games that start at 3 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
Like we'd stop playing, they'd close it down for, depending on the games, we'd close down anywhere from midnight to 2 a.m. And I'm getting laughed at over here.
Oh, nice kiss.
Yeah. But our games could start pretty much any time throughout the day. Matter of fact, we had nationals here a few years ago, and the very first day of nationals, I played the second game, and I think we started at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And but
well, here's the thing. When you went to Iowa, now see, the thing is, if you could have gotten out of your room, you would have found there was nothing to do. Nothing to do.
I did get out of my room.
Okay. So when you go outside, I mean, okay, kids can find ways to get in trouble. They don't need stores and things like that. But there was nothing open around, right?
It was more or less, when we were together, it was more or less just getting out and hanging out for the night, because for us it was our vacation. I mean, you're talking about a lot of people who drove all the way there.
Yeah.
And the kids didn't want to be stuck in a hotel room. It wasn't necessarily that we got in trouble.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to be stuck in the hotel room. So if it was us just going around and walking, exploring the town, that's what we did.
Was anything open?
Maybe some gas stations.
Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. It's like, so if you're in Vegas, nothing closes. In fact, probably the deadest time is when the sun's out. Because people are asleep by the pool or whatever. By contrast, if you go to Cincinnati, now my final night there, we spent Sunday night in downtown Cincinnati in a hotel, really nice hotel. I can't remember the name of it. It was a Westin. That's what it was. Really nice hotel. There was nothing open at night, but I didn't go out looking that night. And then we spent 4 days out at a camp about 30, 40 miles away from Cincinnati. And then the last night, I had asked if I could stay an extra night. In part because I didn't want to be done and fly home right away, and the company was willing to let me stay there. But I also found out that the Cincinnati Reds would be in town, and I wanted to go to a game. I'd never been to that ballpark, and I love going to baseball stadiums. And so I stayed one more night and flew home on Saturday. And around the ballpark, it's real lively. There's lots of stuff going on there. And the game itself is a lot of fun. They had a fireworks show, and so I get out of the stadium about 11 o'clock, and around there they have this. They have a few stores. They have a couple of restaurants around there, but I didn't want to go to those because it was too crowded. And one of them was Toby Keith's. I love this bar and restaurant or whatever, and I just didn't feel like going to those, and I thought, well, maybe this is my chance. Maybe I'll get some. If I find a Cincinnati chili place back on the way back to the hotel, but I got a block away from the hotel, and there was nothing. Nothing is open. You know how if you go to a Mariners game here, and if you walk from the stadium to the ferry, there are all kinds of places you can go to. Cincinnati is lights out. Nothing is going on.
Reminds me of Westport.
Oh yeah.
Oh, have you ever been out there?
I don't know.
Oh, so it
you say this is on the coast, right?
Yeah, this is like if you headed to Ocean Shores, you get to Aberdeen. Instead of going straight through Aberdeen to Ocean Shores, you hang a left.
Oh, okay.
And you go down to Westport. It's a much smaller town, but I mean, even on the weekends, pretty much everything's closed up. And then during the week, everything closes at 5 or 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they board up. The only thing that's open, they have usually 2 restaurants that are open. That's it.
Yeah, it's not many times in life that I'll say, "Oh, if only I could find a 7-Eleven." But this is what it was like in Cincinnati. Now, fortunately, I was able to get room service, and so that was fine. So it ended up being fine, and I don't know, we watched HBO for a while or something like that. And but it was just so. And I've had this experience before too. And I went one time. I stayed in Pittsburgh, and this was years ago, so I don't know if Pittsburgh has changed, but. Pretty much the whole place was shut down the whole weekend, and so it's just when you have a downtown that is basically built around people doing business 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, there is not a lot going on after 5 o'clock, and that's something when you live in a place like Seattle, you're just not used to.
Yeah,
I think
I think even here in Bremerton, there's still quite a bit to do after hours.
Right. Yeah, it's an unnerving feeling to be in a city that, by comparison, I mean, Cincinnati, it probably rivals Seattle in size. Probably not quite as big, but you walk around this, a fairly big city, and there's just nothing going on, and so then you start worrying about whoever you do see, because I don't really feel unsafe in Seattle when I'm walking back from the ball games, and we've seen plenty of news items where I probably should feel a little more cautious than I do, but there is something that is comforting about having tons of people around, and so that is the Cincinnati road trip. And then the next morning, I got up and I had to get to the airport, and it was just like even the airport there was just nothing going on. So
it's kind of like Las Vegas's airport. It's always empty.
Yeah.
Everybody gets in and gets out. That's it.
Yeah, and I was actually stunned by you talk about airports. I used to have a job where I would travel every weekend, and so I knew airports all over the place, and they all kind of had the same feel back then. You'd have a few stores. This was in the early 90s. You'd have a few stores, but airports weren't really places to hang out. Well, that all changed in the 90s. They started adding, there were lots of places to shop and things like that. And I hadn't been to the Vegas airport, and when I went down there a couple of years ago, I was just stunned by all the video displays.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me a taste for what I was, kind of the sensory experience I was, me and my kids were about to take on. So that was pretty impressive. Cincinnati, by contrast, and this was the thing. I remember being in the Portland airport, and I was noticing how much airports had changed and how much shopping there was available and how much there was. And a lot of it was behind the security gates. So once you got through the security gates, there was all kinds of shopping. And once 9/11 happened, I thought, uh-oh, this is all going to change. These stores aren't going to be able to make it, because you used to be able to walk your friends to the gate itself and send them on the plane and hang out at the airport if you wanted to, though I'm not sure why somebody would, but and it hasn't really changed, and those stores still exist. But I went to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati was an airport I had been to quite a bit when I traveled, because we would fly Delta, and Cincinnati was a Delta hub. And from my recollection, Cincinnati was one of my favorite airports, because there just were a few things to do as opposed to other airports. And like I said, all of that changed in the 90s. There's all kinds of stuff to do in airports now. If you're there at the right hour, obviously. But we got to Cincinnati, and it didn't look any different than it did 25 years ago. The last time I was there, I was a little disappointed, and I understand they've shut down a terminal. You know, in Ohio itself was a fairly decent trip. It was a nice. Well, for one thing, the weather was great, but it was genuinely pretty. Like I said, I've knocked it. It's like you don't plan to go there, but you went to Wisconsin on vacation, and it was because you have family.
Family.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Cincinnati and that is the same place, same kind of thing. And interesting, I do cover politics for the Kitsap Sun, and we're in a left-leaning state. And in a second, get Kevin is here, and they're going to do their show here in a little bit. And in fact, I want to ask him a question. Can he get on the air?
Yeah,
in a second?
give me just a second.
All right. But Ohio is a swing state, and there were no signs of that. I think you probably have to go to places like Cleveland to find the more left elements in Ohio, because where we traveled was right by the Ronald Reagan Highway, and I think it was a fairly conservative part of Ohio, but it's a pretty even mix there, I understand. So, Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's going on, Steve? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So I saw your travel log on Facebook from Vegas, and I've been talking quite a bit about Vegas on this show, and it was kind of sparked by your trip.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm
So
sorry, I'll have to listen to the podcast, which will be available tomorrow on this very same
interesting.
website.
That's right. So how was it?
It was amazing.
Are you going to be talking about it on your show?
Yeah. Paul's going to be a little late, so I got about a half hour or so the first segment of our show to fill. So I'll talk a little bit about Vegas and my impressions, and also what I think Bremerton could learn from Vegas.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll have to listen to your show now.
You can hang out if you want to. I got an extra seat if you want to hang out for a little bit.
All right. Yeah. Maybe I'll stick around for a while.
All right.
So yeah, until Paul gets here. So Paul's going to be in studio.
No, he'll be
there?
on Skype later. He'll be
he
joining
will.
us from the St. Paul compound.
Yeah, I'll hang out for a while.
Okay, great.
So, just real quick, what'd you think of Fremont?
Fremont was amazing.
Yeah.
I had heard stories about Fremont, but I think if given the choice between wandering the Strip or hanging out in Fremont, I would have chosen Fremont.
Huh.
Have you experienced it before?
Yeah, I was there with my kids.
Yeah, it's just amazing the way they've turned around what was old Vegas.
Yeah.
And the foresight that they had in planning that and just kind of just reviving that district.
I was telling Caleb that and I don't think I worded it this way. I mean, I liked the old Vegas, and I wish they could have made that work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I fully appreciate why they had to do what they did. It was part of it was being there with my kids. I said I was there with my kids, and there was a little bit of sensory overload, and plus there were the go-go girls dancing in the windows, and
yeah. How old were the kids at the time?
Well, my youngest would have been 5.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And but the one who really had a problem was I think 11 at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just sensory overload, and a lot of strange people walking around. If we're just standing there, if you just stand there and taking the show, looking up at the ceiling and looking up at what they're doing up there, and plus they couldn't go inside any buildings because you walk into a building and there's a casino. And as I was mentioning to Caleb, first thing that happened, we walked into a casino because we were going to get the dollar hot dogs and the deep fried treats, and we went up there, and one of our kids walked in with us, and we heard real loud, "Hey, they can't be in here." And it was like, oh, and we hadn't heard that in the rest of Vegas. So, yeah, Caleb told me about the deals you got on the hotels and the games you had to play to get the game.
Yeah, one of my roommates lost their job, and so I thought I was going to have to cancel the trip just out of keeping fundage in the house. But thank God for Facebook.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we're about to wrap up here. I was comparing Vegas to Cincinnati, and I'm interested in hearing what Vegas or what Bremerton can learn from Vegas. One of the things Caleb and I were talking about was that you go to the difference between Vegas and Vegas is a vacation town, so it's not fair to compare it to that. But we're just talking about how I got a block away from the stadium in Cincinnati, and there was nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, at any rate, I look forward to hearing all that. Thanks, everyone, for listening today. Now, I'll be back again next week, and we'll have the I'll come up. Well, next week is Mother's Day, and so I might pre-record the show. I haven't decided yet. It depends on whether I can get my stuff done on time. But at any rate, I look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks again so much. This is Field of Steve for now. I'll update you on that as well. Until next week.